Hey everyone, and welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are going to embark on a seriously fascinating biological thought experiment. We're going to take a long, hard look at our own biology, our evolutionary history, and our, well, kind of complicated relationship with this planet. And to do that, we have to ask some pretty uncomfortable questions. So grab your detective hats because we are diving headfirst into the ultimate cold case, the mystery of human existence.
I mean, just look around for a second. Every single species on this planet has spent millions of years adapting perfectly to Earth, right? Fish developed gills so they could breathe underwater, birds evolved hollow bones for flight, and polar bears grew that incredibly thick fur to survive the freezing Arctic. They all fit their environments literally like a glove. And then there's us. So what if the reason we often feel so out of place is because, biologically speaking, we actually are?
Okay, let's dive into this. Think about our relationship with our local star, the sun. Lizards, dogs, cats, horses, they spend their entire lives out under the sun. Their fur, their scales, their pigmentation, it's all perfectly calibrated for it. Ours? Yeah, totally isn't. We literally burn in our own sunlight. Think about how wild that is. We had to invent a synthetic chemical paste, sunscreen, and smear it all over our bodies just to go outside safely. We basically had to invent a defense mechanism because our own star is constantly trying to injure us.
All right, moving into Chapter 1, Earth's Worst Fit. Let's mark the crime scene of human biology and see just how poorly we actually fit in here.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is this massive number right here. 80%. 80% of humans will experience chronic back pain at some point in their lives. Look, when 4 out of 5 members of an entire species share the exact same structural flaw, you kind of have to stop blaming the individual's posture and start questioning the blueprint. Our spines are essentially horizontal bridges that evolution tried to just forcefully stand upright. Gravity compresses the discs between our vertebrae in ways they were literally never designed to handle. Other bipedal animals, like ostriches, they were built from the ground up for standing. Us? Actually, scratch that, we weren't built for it. We were just retrofitted. And honestly, retrofitted badly.
And the anomalies definitely don't stop at our spines. Human childbirth is notoriously the most dangerous birth process of any mammal. Our babies' heads barely even fit through the birth canal. And when they finally are born, they're entirely helpless. Think about it. A horse gives birth and that foal is up and walking around in maybe 30 minutes. A human baby? It can't even hold its own head up for months. Then, look at our immune systems. A massive 30% of the global population has severe allergies, meaning our bodies go to absolute war against completely harmless stuff, like pollen, dust, peanuts. But honestly, perhaps the strangest anomaly is right up in our heads. We are the only species walking around with the full, heavy awareness of our own mortality. Dogs and dolphins aren't out there having existential crises, you know? We build entire civilizations, massive philosophies, just to cope with this dread. It's like we're conscious enough to sense something is fundamentally wrong, but completely unable to figure out what.
Which brings us to Chapter 2, the invasive species. Let's look at how we fit into the bigger ecological picture.
So almost every species on Earth exists in this beautiful closed loop. Predators, prey, decomposers. Everyone plays their specific part to keep the ecosystem in a delicate balance. Except us. We clear-cut massive forests, poison rivers, pump crazy amounts of gases into the atmosphere. We are not participating in Earth's ecosystem. We're actively taking it apart piece by piece. And biologically speaking, that is the exact textbook behavior of an invasive species. It's exactly what happens when something gets dropped into an environment it just wasn't built for. It doesn't follow the rules simply because those rules were never written for it in the first place.
So naturally, we hit Chapter 3, the panspermia hypothesis. If our biology is so bizarrely unearthly, where in the universe did we actually come from?
Now, before you roll your eyes and think this is just some wild sci-fi movie plot, hear me out. Back in 1973, Francis Crick, yeah, the same guy who literally won a Nobel Prize for co-discovering the structure of DNA, proposed a highly radical theory alongside chemist Leslie Orgel. They called it directed panspermia. The man who decoded the very instruction manual of life looked at Earth and seriously suggested that life was deliberately seeded here by an intelligent civilization from elsewhere in the galaxy. And decades later, in 2013, an ecologist named Dr. Ellis Silver published a whole book echoing this, pulling together all our physical anomalies to argue that, hey, we might literally come from somewhere else. And you know, the timing actually supports this suspicion. The Earth is roughly 4.5 billion years old. First life showed up about 3.8 billion years ago.
That means complex organic chemistry appeared just 700 million years after the Earth formed. Now that might sound like a long time to us, but in geological time, that is basically overnight. The planet was still a toxic, molten hellscape getting hammered by asteroids, and boom, life just pops up almost the exact second conditions allowed it. Biologists have always found that timeline to be, well, highly suspicious.
Plus, we absolutely have proof that life can survive the brutal harshness of space. Have you heard of the Murchison meteorite? It crashed into Australia back in 1969, and it was carrying over 90 different amino acids, the literal building blocks of life, just hitching a ride through the cosmos on a rock. And then you have tardigrades, those crazy little microscopic water bears. They can survive the vacuum of space, cosmic radiation, even temperatures near absolute zero. In fact, an Israeli spacecraft crashed on the moon in 2019, and scientists believe the tardigrades that were on board might still be viable up there right now. So, organic chemistry surviving space? Surviving a trip between worlds? Absolutely possible.
Okay, but before we officially declare ourselves interstellar space travelers, let's look at Chapter 4, Evolutionary Mismatch Theory. This is mainstream biology's brilliant, incredibly grounded counter-argument.
So the crucial point here is this concept of evolutionary mismatch. See, evolution moves incredibly slowly, like painstakingly slow. This theory argues that no, we aren't aliens, we're essentially just walking around in a 6 million-year-old prototype body that never got its final software update. Our traits were perfectly adapted for a completely different, previous environment, and now they are actively disadvantaged in our modern world.
Let's quickly break down how this theory logically explains all our weird flaws. Sunburn? Well, we traded our protective fur so we could sweat and cool down while persistence hunting for hours on the hot African savanna. The sunburn is just the unfortunate price we pay for being able to outrun basically every other animal. What about that back pain? Simple. 6 million years of walking upright just hasn't been enough time, generationally speaking, for evolution to perfect the spine. And childbirth? It's known as the obstetric dilemma. Evolution was aggressively trying to make our brains bigger, while at the exact same time trying to keep our pelvises narrow enough for walking upright. The pelvis just got caught in the middle. It's totally messy, it's dangerous, but biologically, it is entirely logical.
Mismatch theory even beautifully explains our whole environmental destruction habit. We evolved in tiny hunter-gatherer groups on a savanna where natural resources felt absolutely endless. Because of that, our brains are just hardwired for short-term survival. We aren't an invading alien armada. We're just an animal that got way too powerful, way too fast for our own ancient wiring to handle.
All right, so mismatch theory handles the biology side of things. But that brings us to Section 5, the speed of progress. And this is the final, lingering piece of evidence that keeps the mystery wide open.
And this brilliantly illustrates exactly what I mean. Just look at the sheer scale of this timeline. Dolphins have been hanging around for roughly 50 million years. They are wildly intelligent, but they've never built a single tool. Chimpanzees figured out how to use sticks maybe 4 million years ago and haven't filed for a single patent since. But humans, in just 2 million years, we went from hitting sharpened rocks together to splitting the atom, from cave paintings to artificial intelligence, from banging flint to driving remote-controlled rovers on Mars. I mean, 125 years ago, airplanes literally didn't exist. 35 years ago, the internet wasn't a thing. Absolutely nothing in the 4 billion-year history of this planet has ever accelerated like us. No way.
Now, to be fair, science does have some fragments of an explanation for this crazy speed. Step 1. Discovering fire and cooking unlocked massive amounts of calories, which gave our brains the energy they needed to grow. Step 2. A sudden random mutation in the FOXP2 gene is believed to have unlocked our capacity for complex speech. And Step 3. Our unique ability to teach allowed us to stack knowledge across generations. All of these definitely played a huge role. But here's the kicker. Even mainstream evolutionary biologists admit that none of these steps fully explain the sheer, unprecedented speed of our leap from being a random prey animal to completely running the planet in what is essentially a geological blink of an eye.
The truth is, we just don't have the full picture yet. And honestly, that's exactly what keeps this mystery alive and kicking. Asking uncomfortable questions is just science doing what science does best. It's that exact same burning curiosity that made us look up at the night sky and say, hey, let's build rockets and go see what's out there. You know, maybe that deep existential restlessness we all feel, maybe it isn't a flaw in our wiring. Maybe it's a clue. Because if we are from here, we are undoubtedly the strangest, most contradictory thing Earth has ever produced. And if we aren't, well, then we've been trying to find our way home for 200,000 years without even realizing it.
So I'll leave you with this final thought to ponder today. As you weigh all the evidence, the painful spines, the savanna-wired brains, the mind-bending meteoric leap from stone tools to the International Space Station, what do you think? Are we genuinely an invasive species dropped onto the wrong rock?
Or are we just evolution's most brilliant, beautiful, and fundamentally broken prototype? Thanks for exploring with us, and I'll catch you in the next one.